Hi guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kyra, and here on my channel, we're all about real makeup for real life and real people. New here, a very special welcome to you. I hope you will consider subscribing before you leave if you like what you see today. It also helps you find my videos more easily on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday when I upload. And allegedly, if you ring that little notification bell to all, YouTube will let you know when that happens. So today's video is a follow-up to a video that I did a couple of weeks ago, and that was my most used makeup video. That video was inspired by Kelly Gooch and Judy here on YouTube. They did a collaboration using that concept, so thank you to them for the inspiration. I'll have those videos linked down below. But I did ask you guys in that video if you would like to see an eyeshadow version, and so that is what we're going to do today. I have two categories. One is most used overall, used, abused, and dirty. And then the second category are the palettes that I feel like I've used the most so far in 2020. So in the category of most used overall in my collection, we're going to start with two former Pan That palettes, including the one I'm wearing on my eyes today. The first one is the Lorac Mega Pro 2, my bestie. I love this palette. I never ever get sick of using it, and I was really excited to use it today because I've been sticking really hard, for the most part, to my November Shop My Stash. Love, love, love this palette. Today I have burlap in my transition, saddle in my crease. I blended out a little bit with melon for warmth. Then on the outer part of the lid, I have forest. Over most of the lid, I have olivine, which is one of my all-time favorite shades in this palette. And then I highlighted the inner corner with this shade Seashell. And I, like I said, did attempt to pan this palette at one point. I wanted to see how many pans I could hit in a year. And while all of my Pan That palettes have been a fail, I have gotten great use out of this palette. So I do have 5 pans in this palette. And I'm really close to hitting pan on quite a few other shades. Definitely going to pull this in to a hint project pan in the new year, so stay tuned for that. My other former Pan That palette, which I still love and adore and also might pull into my project pan in the new year, is the original Jaclyn Hill and Morphe palette. And again, I did try panning this one. I have 7 shiny pans in this palette. Yeah, I love this palette. I love it still. It has so many shades in it that are kind of staples to me, go-tos for certain looks, and I absolutely adore this palette. So she's definitely gotten a lot of love from me, as you can tell, with all the pans as well as all the dips in other shades as well. Another palette that I am so close to hitting pan on because I use it a ton. It's just one that I really enjoy. It seems to cover a lot of bases for me and my wardrobe and my taste, and that is the Natasha Denona Mini Star palette. And I'm very close to hitting pan on this shade as well as this center shade. And again, this is one I'm considering putting into my project pan in the new year because I am so close to hitting pan on this, and I just enjoy working with this little palette. It has a duochrome in here. It has this beautiful champagne metallic, and then we've got this chroma crystal formula. This is like a beautiful greeny, grungy, goldy brass shade, but it's very reflective, and I can't say enough good things about this one. I've had it, I'm trying to think. I've had this for a little over a year, maybe longer. I don't know. This was my first Natasha Denona palette, however, so I should say that. If you're waiting for this palette to show up in my most used overall in my collection, this one's for you. It's the Persona Identity palette. I have the original packaging and I'm really happy about that. I love the artwork on here. And this is another one where I have noticeable dips in nearly all of the shades. It's a stunning palette. This works for every day. This works for glam. This works for anything. There's nothing that this palette can't do for you in the realm of neutral shadows. The shimmers are so smooth and stunning that it's like, why would you use anything else? It actually makes your eyelids look better than it really is. They are gorgeous. And this is one of the only palettes, eyeshadow palettes in my collection that I've ever considered purchasing a backup of, because I don't ever want to be without these shades in my life. It's just everything to me. It's one of the tippy top eyeshadow formulas, in my opinion, out on the market today. And it's also highly underrated. You know, I don't hear a lot of people talking about the Identity palette anymore, but it's always a friend of mine. So the last one in this category comes with a caveat. This is the second purchase of this palette for me. My first palette had a lot of wear, but when I was helping my stepmom learn a little bit more about makeup and how to create makeup that looks nice behind glasses, I went ahead and sent home that palette with her, and then I had to repurchase it because I missed it right away. And that is the e.l.f. New Classics. So the reason I tell you that whole story is this palette may not look used and abused yet, but that's because this is not my first one of this palette. But there's nothing, again, this palette can't do for me in the realm of neutrals. You have warm, you have cool, you have rosy, you have glam, you have everyday. It's just stunning in every way. This is 100% my favorite eyeshadow formula from the drugstore, and I highly recommend this, especially for a beginner in eyeshadow, especially for someone who mostly wears, you know, eyeshadow for work or things like that. The mattes are super smooth, like blend themselves, and then the shimmers, oh how they shine. Alrighty, next are the top 5 eyeshadow palettes that I feel like I've used the most in 2020. The first one was a little gift from my daughter, and I just love it. I love that she picked this out for me because it's not something I maybe would have picked out for myself or like gravitated toward, but now that I have it in my collection and I know what it can do, I love this. And that is the little e.l.f. bite-size eyeshadow in the shade Pumpkin Pie. Definitely my favorite bronze in my collection. It never fails me. It is absolutely stunning. Both the shimmers in here are very, very nice shimmers. Beautiful quality. I forgot to wipe off the Persona swatches. So here's that bronze. Look how it shines. Look at this copper. How stinking beautiful is that? I just can't believe that this little palette only costs $3 for 4 amazing eyeshadows. The mattes in these are every bit as good as the mattes in the New Classics or any of the palettes that are in this format. I think they're wonderful. But this one I just have used an absolute ton. I either put my bronzer in my crease or use another little palette, or of course there are these 2 shades here. I just diffuse those in the crease and pick one of these shades for the lid. It's very quick and easy, but it has such a high impact because of these amazing shimmers. Another mini palette that I've gotten a ton of use out of this year. In fact, I called this the Kyra palette when it came out, and I'm really hoping for a larger size, if that gives you any clues. It's the Natasha Denona Mini Retro palette, and I really am hoping that she either does a full size or preferably a mid-size palette with this kind of color story, because this is my jam. Think OG Norvina palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. Got those sort of dusty, muted shades that just look ethereal and soft and feminine, and that's how I feel about this palette. Not to mention this first shade, which is Galaxia, is something to behold. I already have a really nice dip in there. I think these two mattes were perfectly paired for this palette. You have this beautiful, nice sort of peachy pink shade, and then this greeny silver is one that I wear a whole ton as well. I love just this with this matte green, maybe the pink in the transition, and that makes it just a stunning look. And I really do hope that Natasha comes out maybe for a spring release, let's say. Let's come out with a midi size retro palette, and I would just be a happy girl. Coming up next, some of you may remember just how much I used the Alter Ego Sahara palette. This is meant to be a dupe for the Natasha Denona Beva palette, and I loved this one so much that I bought the real deal. And I still reach for this one because they are slightly different, but this is absolutely gorgeous. I just love this color story, and I kind of wanted to test the waters and see if I actually would use a palette that only has 3 shimmers, that is, you know, set up the way that this is. And I did use it so much that right before we moved, my hubby treated me to the Natasha Denona Beva palette for all of my hard work packing up our old place. So I love this. I love that you can go cool tone. I love that you can go more rosy. You can certainly pull a warm look out of here. You can definitely get a more neutral brown look out of here. The 3 shimmers, just like in the Natasha Denona palette, are absolutely perfect. You have a light gold, a bronze, and like a pinky champagne color, and they are just perfect. They're the only ones that I need to make an eye look, and these perform really beautifully. Every single one of these shadows performs beautifully. There isn't a dud shade in this palette, and if you get a good gander at it, you might be able to see how much I've used it this year. And it's so silly, but I'm having trouble wanting to let this one go, even though I have the Beva palette. What is that about? Are you a psychotherapist? I need to know. What's my problem? It's probably a hoarding issue, but I love this palette from Alter Ego. I'm glad that I used it a ton, and you know, it's a favorite. And then one palette from last year that I have continued to use and abuse throughout this year is the Charlotte Tilbury Starry Hypnotized. This was from Holiday 2019. And I've continued to use the absolute snot out of this thing for all of 2020. This is one of my go-to everyday palettes because of how it's set up in the trios. I don't have to think about which eyeshadows I want to use in a palette or this palette. I could just pick a trio and go with whatever I'm wearing. Like today, I might have gone with that green trio. You can certainly mix and match, but I like having a starting place of a trio to give focus to a look, especially on an everyday basis. If I'm not filming, I want to put myself together a little bit. Maybe I have to go to the grocery store or something like that. I want something quick, and this is one that I have gravitated to repeatedly, and that makes it that makes it worth every bit of the $75 that my hubby paid for it last year. Last but not least, for palettes that I've used the most in 2020 is the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. Coming up, creeping up, the next honorable mention would be the Glam Palette, because those are 2 of the palettes that I kept out during the move and the few weeks after the move when I still hadn't unpacked my makeup yet. So this one, I just can't even. I did 7 looks with this palette, so I'll link that below for you. And I just love every shade in here. I love this little addition of like a cool toned little corner over here. And the mattes are really beautiful. I have mentioned that I wish there was a little more difference between the mattes. These three right here tend to look very similar on the eye. I love this shade and have worn this repeatedly just by itself, called Suntan. It's kind of a rosy brownie terracotta color. And then Magma, this what would I call you, a brick color, is really beautiful as well. But I do wish maybe we had swapped out one of these two like peachy brown shades. I feel like an eyelash or something on my face. It's tickling me. I wish one of those had been like a deep brown. That's my only critique of this palette, or criticism rather, but I just love the textures in here. I think one of everybody's favorite shades is this one called Silk, but I also really love this shade called Bliss. It reminds me of like the NARS Orgasm version of an eyeshadow, and it's really, really pretty. The shade Silk is just so foiled and so glorious on the lid, and then this Bliss shade has like a goldy green reflect to it with a really warm pinky base, which is why it reminds me of the NARS blush. But absolutely beautiful. This is a great everyday palette for someone who likes warm tones. If you're more into neutral and cool tones, I say maybe consider the Glam palette, because it's good for that as well. But again, I kept this out for my move and I used it a ton. And that, my friends, is a wrap. That's all I have for you today. But let me know down below, what is your most used eyeshadow palette in your entire collection? And what's your most used eyeshadow palette from 2020? I am dying to know, because I just think things like this are really fun to talk about. So thanks for sharing it with me today. I always appreciate each and every one of you that watches my videos. If you did like today's video, I would absolutely appreciate it so much if you could give it a thumbs up for me, leave a comment, share it with your friends and family on social media if you think somebody might like my content. And with all of that said, I hope all of your makeup days are absolutely beautiful, most used makeup days, and I will see you in my next video real soon.